Welcome, and thank you for joining us for a panel discussion on houselessness in Washington County. My name is Christy, and I am a librarian at the Hillsboro Public Library, and Mary will be assisting me tonight behind the scenes. Tonight's event is part of Hillsboro Reads, which is the library's community-wide reading program. The books this year are Nomadland by Jessica Bruder, and our student book selection is No Fixed Address by Susan Nielsen. These books have themes of housing and economic insecurity, which is also currently impacting many Hillsboro families and individuals across ages, cultures, and backgrounds. Tonight, we hope to create a dialogue that provides information, insights, and understanding from a place of compassion and respect to deepen empathy towards those who are facing houselessness and economic insecurity. We owe special thanks to the Friends of the Hillsboro Public Library and to the Library Foundation for making this and all of Hillsboro Reads possible. So tonight, this program will be recorded and available to everyone on the Hillsboro Library's YouTube channel. We are also streaming live at the Hillsboro Brookwood Library's event room. I will begin by asking questions of the panelists for about 45 minutes. And for everyone out there watching and listening, please put your questions in the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your tab. You can hover over that and select it and put questions in there. The panelists will spend about the last 15 minutes of the time answering your questions. So tonight's panelists are key leaders who work with people in the community who are experiencing economic and housing insecurity. I would like to introduce Pat Rogers, an Assistant Director of Housing Stability for Community Action. Maria Hernandez is a Supportive Housing Services Program Manager with Bienestar. Alex Devin is a Services Network Administrator with Washington County Housing Services. And Melissa Esquivel is a Peer Outreach Coordinator with New Narrative. So welcome. I'd like each of you to take a few moments just to tell everyone what it is that you do and about the work you do. I'll start with Pat.
Hi, again, my name is Pat Rogers. I work for Community Action. Community Action offers a variety of services targeted to households that are in poverty, and our services are intended to mitigate the effects of poverty in households. So some of the programs we offer are the Head Start program, which offers pre-K access to kids in low-income households. We have a energy conservation program, which assists low-income households to bring their households up to standards. We can replace windows, provide air conditioners, tighten up houses that are drafty, that sort of thing. We have a emergency rent assistance program designed to serve households that are in danger of losing their housing and prevent homelessness. We also have a utility assistance program designed to provide utility assistance to households and that sort of budget relief to households that are struggling with those types of bills. We also have the Housing and Homeless Services program, which I've been primarily tied to throughout my time at Community Action. And that program consists of our family shelter that's on 12th and Washington. We're part of a larger network of shelters in Washington County serving homeless families with children. And then we also, to further the services to prevent and end homelessness, we have short to medium term rent assistance programs that are designed to bring families, rapidly rehouse families that are experiencing homelessness or to prevent homelessness. And those programs provide a combination of ongoing support in the form of rent assistance and case management for up to anywhere from 3 months to up to 2 years. So that's pretty much our agency in a brief overview.
Okay. Maria, do you want to tell us what you do? And you have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Maria Hernandez, and I'm the Supportive Housing Services Program Manager at Bienestar. Bienestar's mission is to build housing, hope, and community for the well-being of the Latinx immigrants and families in need. We are an affordable housing developer that primarily serves the low-income Latinx and farm worker community in Washington County. Through this funding, we were able to launch our very own supportive housing services program that started in September of 2021 and have a total of 4 team members and have served over 18 community members experiencing houselessness.
Melissa, do you want to go next?
Hello, I'm the new narrative outreach coordinator. I do literal street outreach. We provide resources. We really focus on peer support. For those that aren't familiar with peer support, we're a group of 5, and it's with life lived experience only on our team. We also offer resources for housing navigation, addiction services, mental health services, which New Narrative is a mental health agency. We also run a drop-in center. As of now, we don't have a new drop-in center because of COVID. It was too small and we had to get closed down, but we're looking for a new spot, and we will focus on marginalized groups. So we'll also be providing support groups, just a place to get out of the weather. We do assessments, we'll offer snacks, drinks. We do outings. We do a lot of advocacy. So yeah.
Thank you. Alex, you're on.
Hey everyone, my name's Alex Devin. I work for the Washington County Housing Department under the Supportive Housing Services Initiative. Within our department, we are focusing on ending chronic homelessness in Washington County, as well as making significant strides and impacts towards those who are newly experiencing homelessness or might be in a housing crisis or experiencing major housing instability. Within my role within Washington County, I focus on program development and contracting with our community-based partners throughout the county to provide the services to get people that are experiencing homelessness indoors and hopefully not back out on the streets ever.
Great. Okay, well, thank you everyone. I'm so happy you're here today. And we're going to get right into the questions we have for the panel. So the first question I'm going to direct, starting with Alex, what is currently being done to reduce houselessness in Hillsboro, especially unsheltered street houselessness?
Great question. A lot is happening. And it started, I would say, before the Metro Supportive Housing Services Bond even took effect. And it originally started with work that Community Action was also doing within, the greater Washington County, but also Hillsboro. And that was through federal funds that were given to us for COVID relief. And some of the funds that they used, I'm sure Pat will talk more about later, but we're really focused on outreach services as well as medium-term rehousing interventions. What we're currently working on is we've contracted out with 14 nonprofit providers throughout Washington County. About 6 or 7 of them are actually in Hillsboro. And they are contracted out to serve 700 chronically homeless households. And that program is to help people essentially enroll them in a program, provide them supportive services, connect them with a vouchering program through the Housing Authority, help them move into their own apartments, and then provide ongoing supportive services to them indefinitely or as long as they need it. We are also working on launching medium-term rehousing programs, which will focus on households that, excuse me, are either newly homeless or are imminently at risk of losing their housing. And those programs are medium-term programs, so they last anywhere from 3 to 24 months. We are also working on some hotel acquisitions. You might know of the Econo Lodge, which is in Hillsboro, which is working with 60 households at any given time that were experiencing a housing crisis, and that is a housing focused shelter. So as residents move in that shelter location, their primary objective there is for housing search and placement so that they can find their own apartment, move in and move through the shelter system so that we can bring new people into that shelter essentially to continue housing folks. We're also working on expanding our outreach services throughout the county, which definitely includes Hillsboro, which has one of the largest portions of the homeless community within Washington County. And outreach workers are essentially tasked with quality of life, checking on people, making sure that they have their documentation and all the things necessary so that they can get connected to a housing case manager to move them into their own apartment and therefore get off the street. We're also working with the city of Hillsboro on some other interventions. Some of them are encampment programs, and those are essentially to make sure that if there is encampments in the area, that they don't, that it's not a public health issue, that people are safe, that it's a healthy environment, and it isn't a public health nuisance essentially for the community. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing within Hillsboro to effectively try to get the non-housed population indoors.
Pat, do you want to add to the question? What is currently being done?
Yeah, I would also add that Alex and his team have helped redesign our coordinated entry system in Washington County. So all of the service that is provided to this population we're discussing, whether it's chronically homeless folks or anybody that's experiencing housing insecurity or houselessness, we have had a coordinated entry system in place for quite some time that Community Action has managed the daily operations of. But since the Metro Supportive Housing Services levy passed, Alex's team has helped modernize that system that was kind of one built around scarcity, because our system was didn't have a profound amount of assistance available to serve the populations that we're discussing tonight. And so now that we do have a system of plenty, we needed to take a look at our coordinated entry method, redesign it, and have more of a guaranteed outcome for anybody that enters the front door of this coordinated coordinated system. So we didn't get to mention that, but that's kind of a key piece of this, along with outreach. We're currently contracted with 5 different providers in the county that have teams of outreach workers making contact with the homeless population, especially the ones that you're seeing on the side of the road and in encampments. Melissa's team is one of those teams. And the purpose is to develop relationships and engage with folks over a period of time to the extent that they're willing to take a step toward coming indoors and off of the streets. So.
Thank you, Pat. Maria, do you want to talk about what is currently being done?
So since Bienestar has helped we accepted a contract with the Supportive Housing Services through the county. And we currently have our 3 case managers that are out there doing outreach. We are housing the participants and doing wraparound services. We also have a contract with Community Action for the ESG program. And we've been pretty successful. So I'm super excited that it's been successful to get some of our participants housed, and we're looking forward to continue to getting people housed.
And Melissa.
Well, we use a lot of, again, I'm a peer support specialist, so we use a lot of peer support to just be with them throughout the process. We have a group of 10 in New Narrative. We've added 5 more to the housing advocacy team. So we have warm handoffs that we do with that. We also assist with assessments to get that ball rolling. Also with outreach, we provide, all the documents that they need to get their foot in the door with the vouchers. So yeah, I think most of like Pat and Maria, we do a lot of the same stuff.
You guys are on the ground running. I think all of you are a little bit. So I have another question. What are the solutions that work? So tell us, I'll start with Pat. What is working?
Well, one of the solutions we haven't gotten to yet, first of all, focusing on the folks that are the hardest to serve is a solution that works, because in a system where the system has a tendency to serve the easiest situations, those wind up being the only situations that get served. And so we need to intentionally target the hardest to serve, because our resources need to go to that population, or they'll continue to be out there. One of the things that we need to get to, that we're in our first year of this system of plenty, so there's a lot on the horizon that we haven't gotten to yet, but models that are wrapped around the idea of harm reduction, where the population we're targeting, the persons out in encampments and on the streets that are battling some behavioral health issues, we have to have housing and opportunities that are tolerant of the some of the things that people are struggling with. So you just can't take a person who's been in an encampment for 5 years or 10 years and just put them in an apartment and come and visit them once a month. They need a lot of saturated support. They need landlords or housing providers that are going to be basically expecting to have to deal with behaviors that are a little bit out of the norm for a while. Part of that has been the strategy we have in place to reach out and develop relationships with as many landlords as possible, and help them come around to the idea that it would behoove them to serve this population. So that's a tall order when you're working in a private landlord market. And so it takes a lot of finesse on the part of service providers and support people to develop a kind of a pool of landlords that are willing to work with the folks that we're talking about, like the hardest to serve. But I'd also defer to Alex or anybody else on this question.
Alex, do you want to go next?
I saw Maria had her hand up, so I want to give her the opportunity before.
Thank you,
Maria.
Alex. So like Pat said, is when we get our participants housed, we also want to keep them housed. So that's where the case management comes. We just want to make sure that they are successful, because they do need a lot of care. They need a lot of resources to continue to be stabilized in their home. One thing that I've noticed that works is just pretty much meeting them where they're at, being non-judgmental, and building trust with our participants as well. A lot of the times you hear stories where they've been working with people in the past, and they don't get anywhere, so they tend to lose that trust. So I think that one thing that is very unique about Bienestar is we follow up with our participants and we build trust and make sure that they are willing to work with us, and we case manage to make sure that they are successful.
Okay, Alex, you're going to go next. Okay.
Yeah, I can't help it. So I mean, housing works. If you are unhoused, housing works. I mean, that is you are not homeless if you have a home. I mean, that is the common denominator. And after what Maria and Pat had said, like, yes, the supportive services are paramount. They're important. You can't just give somebody the keys to an apartment and walk away and wish them good luck. Like, there is a lot of support that's needed, a lot of hand holding. But like, through my years doing this work, it's like a lot of it also is really just like a level of like respect for human beings. Like when I was an outreach worker, I would have a 5-minute conversation with somebody, and more often than not, they would say to me, nobody has talked to me like that in years. Like nobody's just like talked to me like another worthy human being in years. And it's just amazing how like society kind of perpetuates homelessness in many areas by like looking down on people that are in a housing crisis or having hard times. And the truth is like just believing in somebody is like a level of empowerment that changes the way a person acts, responds, how they do business. And we do a lot of trainings, and I just love talking about resilience. And it's like people are resilient. We're resilient. I mean, like there is nobody more resilient than people, right? Like we get kicked down, we get back up. And it's like just trusting that the people that we're working with are resilient, and they can do this, and giving them the opportunities to succeed, but being there right next to them when they fail or they don't succeed, and propping them back up and empowering them again for the next step is it's just such an important part of the work we're doing. But when it comes down to it, all throughout all that stuff, it's housing, right? Like the problem is you're outside, the solution is now you're inside. And then we start the real work at that point.
Melissa, would you like to add anything on things that are working?
Working, affordable housing would work. Trauma-informed care would work. I think a lot of, especially in the medical field, there's a lot of trauma there. So I think that's a huge one. Less restrictions, I think, also would work around housing and jobs. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes here. Yeah, just again, I'm gonna say what Pat said is unjudgmental property management. We get a lot of that, and they lose their housing with a snap of a finger after working towards, all the steps that they went through to get that housing. Just one, thing can make them houseless again. So I think that's really important. So I don't know what works. What needs to work is what I have.
All right. The next question I have is, what are the primary causes of houselessness? And if anyone wants to start, or I can pick someone. Alex, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm always willing to start. Thank you, Christy. I mean, there's a slew, right? Like I'm sure whatever I say, Maria will be able to step in and point out 9 more things, and Pat will be able to step in and point out 9 more things. But I mean, there's huge amounts of institutional racism that have been like baked into the system for many, many years, which disenfranchises many populations. And like once you get a felony, like finding a job is a challenge. And what do you get, $200 when you get released from jail or prison? And I mean, that isn't really enough money to bring yourself in. And then you look at, like the wages and the current cost of living comparatively to what the average wage is for households. Most people are one paycheck or one crisis away from being houselessness, being on someone's couch, being in someone's garage. Medical, I mean, there's a lot of people that, you get cancer, you're all of a sudden you're $150,000 in debt. There's no way to get out of that debt. I love our wonderful, payday loans right there. Like those loans are 699% interest rate. So you get somebody that's in a housing crisis, they take out a $300 loan to get out of it. Now they're paying $300 a week for the next 20 years, and they never even pay off that loan they got in the first place. So, I mean, the challenges, I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of like what the solutions we're doing is, but really when it comes down to it, a lot of the work we're doing, me, Pat, Maria, Melissa, we're in triage. These are folks that are bleeding out and need immediate medical attention, or they're going to perish. we are not dealing with the larger systemic issues and causes and conditions that are having people fall into the system in the first place. Those are things that we need to talk to our senators about, talk to our representatives about, that we need to, you know, push for and stand for, because the system is not designed for people to have a crisis. The average person in our society cannot come across a crisis, because they'll fall into a position. And most often than not, if you don't have family, like, you have nobody to catch you out of that crisis, because a lot of people are in that same position, right? And they're not in a position to just pick you up, because they're living paycheck to paycheck as well.
Okay. Melissa, do you want to go next?
I think some of the causes are not enough outreach to tell people about mental health services, about addiction services. You know, those two things are very expensive if you don't have good insurance. And within the BIPOC community, we have a lot of that. You know, nobody knows about any of these resources. I'm the only person of color on my team. I only speak Spanish, but we have a lot of folks within the community that are people of color that I cannot relate with, and might just turn a blind eye to me because I'm not going to understand their struggle. So I think that's one of the causes, you know, that we don't have that livable wages, stigma. So yeah, those are just a couple of things that I have here on my list.
Maria?
Like Melissa and Alex said, they pretty much summed it up. It's pretty much on a case-by-case basis. Employment barriers, criminal backgrounds, life-altering events. That's what I've seen a lot. So it's good not to judge a book by its cover, because you just never know what they've gone through to be where they're at. And that's one thing that I would like a lot of people to understand. Just life happens, and then people end up where they're at. And that's our job to help them get up and get back on their feet and succeed.
Okay, Pat.
My answer for that is the common thread through everything everybody said is poverty is the cause of homelessness. So whether you're underemployed, or whether it's because you're on a fixed income, or whether you're on TANF, or whether you have a behavioral health issue that's affecting your ability to go to work, it all boils down to those that are experiencing poverty are unable to pay for housing or pay bills or suit up and show up in the system and play the game like everybody, like everybody else who is, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. You know, right now, $15 an hour is about $2,600 a month, and rent by itself is $1,500 a month. So if you do that math, it winds up being a math problem, and that's for somebody who's working. But if you're on TANF, a family of three making TANF, you're making $1,000 a month, and that's not even enough to pay rent anywhere. So you're under threat of homelessness. So an equalizer, such as a subsidy, you know, for folks that are struggling with behavioral health issues and maybe on a fixed income like SSI or something like that, their income is never going to go up. So they need an equalizer in the form of a deep subsidy of some sort, whether it's permanent or temporary, to bring them off the streets, or they're just going to stay. People are just going to stay there. And then when it comes to even the support, the idea of a support network or a family support network, we've come to a place where families cannot afford to help out their other family members that are also experiencing poverty. So like, for instance, a person who still has a place to live, who's making $15 an hour, barely scraping by, they can't afford to bring in their brother or sister or adult parent who is on a fixed income and also struggling with poverty, or their housing is going to wind up in jeopardy also. So it's, yeah, the idea of family support is nice, but it's also become a struggle. And in that book, Nomadland, that you brought up earlier, examples of that are throughout that book of people not being able to rely on family support systems to make sure that they have a place, you know, a place to live or to help support themselves.
Thank you. Our next question: what are the demographics of persons experiencing houselessness locally, and are there local trends? And Maria, would you like to start?
Sure. So the demographics that I'm seeing, this is not something that it's on a report or anything, but what I've been noticing is what Patrick had just said, mentioned that adults that are 55 and older on fixed incomes, all types of backgrounds, it's just, you know, it's just not enough to cover rent, especially you're on a fixed income, the rent is probably more than what they receive. And it's just hard not having anybody to fall back on, even if they have a family member. I've had those situations where a participant is 55 and older, they have, they're struggling with a condition, a health condition, but they can't fall back on their family member because if they're there for a little while, then the family member might get evicted and then everybody's out on the streets. So it really is, what I've been noticing a lot is 55 and older.
So we're actually in the process of putting together our homeless count data every 2 years. Each county in the country does a homeless count, and so we just did ours in Washington County about, God, Pat, was about 60 days ago now. Time flies around here. And so we're waiting to hear back on that data to really get another really good snapshot of what the demographics look like. But I can say that historically in Washington County, households from the BIPOC community are way overrepresented in homelessness compared to the percentage of folks that actually live within Washington County. And that goes back to the thing that Pat was talking about poverty and institutional racism and multiple yeared poverty. So that's a thing. I can say that within our programming, we have family programs, transitional age youth programs, over the age of 55 programs, adult programs, and they're all filling up. So I mean, we can break down the percentages, but it really does seem like a housing crisis does not discriminate against age, sex, creed, sexual identity, or lack thereof. It can take most people. It can get most people down. Yeah.
Pat, would you like to add to that?
I would just echo that based upon what I've seen of the point time homeless count in Washington County from this past year and previous years, the predominant age group is the group between 45 and 65.
Okay.
With more and more youth kind of popping up.
Oh, wow. Melissa, are you seeing any trends in your work?
I'd also like to add it is middle-aged, white presenting folks. We're also noticing an influx of people of color who identify as undocumented. Maybe it might be agricultural workers that are just passing through, I have extremely difficult time finding resources for. So yeah, and youth. I'm seeing more and more youth.
All right, so I'm going to move on. So what would you suggest to persons who feel unsafe using public spaces or at their businesses due to proximity of encampments or persons living outside? Melissa, would you like to start?
Empathy, compassion. That would be, respect. There's nothing to be scared of, maybe do some research on mental health and different mental health conditions and what comes with that. So I used to be houseless, and so I living in and out of shelters and such, and being around people with mental health and addiction. Maybe I'm just used to it, but I think that needs to be talked about more and brought up, with your kids, and just talk about what we can do, how we can support those folks. Even with the littlest things, a bottle of water, a cigarette, a meal might make you a little more comfortable with those folks, just taking the time to say hello.
Thank you, Melissa. Maria?
I second what Melissa said.
Thank you. Pat or Alex, do you want to add to what they said?
I will just say that these are folks that are struggling and are not, they don't have an agenda that would include harming others. I'd say there's no larger percentage of those that have an agenda that includes ill will toward others than any other demographic in the population. I mean, folks, there are just many folks that might be unsafe, who are working and have a place to live, as there are, maybe in the homeless community. Most folks are in a struggle, and they have nothing more on their minds but how to stay safe for the upcoming night, and whether or not they're going to be able to hang on to their belongings and not be asked to leave and move somewhere else. And that's their primary goal each day, and it does not include anything beyond that, really. So it's a hard question to answer, because if people are going to feel unsafe, they're going to feel unsafe regardless of what any of us on this panel say.
Okay.
But we do have a lot of experience and a lot of contact with this population, and we're all doing fine.
Thank you. Alex, anything to add? No?
Not a lot. I mean, if somebody's having a behavioral health crisis, or they're having a bad day, they can display behaviors that are frightening. And I'm just as well. I mean, I was homeless on and off for 10 years of my life, right? Like I'm nowhere near that place anymore. I own a home now. So, I mean, I'm sure I was in a position on a few times where people did not want to get anywhere near me back in 2001. So I mean, just like anything else, right? Like if somebody's having a bad day or a crisis, whether it's somebody experiencing homelessness or somebody that has $1 billion and is causing a havoc at a Starbucks, like if somebody's having a bad day, you just stay away, right? You don't get near that person, and that's just a behavioral protective instinct. But I mean, if somebody's just kind of sitting there and doing their own thing, like sometimes a smile or a wave or like a how you doing will actually impact that person greatly, whether you ever see it or not. So it's like Pat said, it's a really hard question to answer, because there's bad people who have housing, and there's bad people that don't have housing, and there's really good people that have housing, and there's really good people that don't have housing, and it's really hard to put everybody like in a little bucket.
Great, thank you for your answers. Okay, well, how can people in the community help? And I'll just open this up to anyone who wants to start with that. How can people help that want to do something?
Well, I'll start by saying that
I can bring up. So,
oh, sorry, Pat's gonna go, and then I'll go to you, Alex.
Sorry, Alex. I will start by saying people in the community have already helped, whether they realize it or not. because they voted the Metro Supportive Housing Services levy into effect, which is why we're building a robust system. And so that voter approval of measures like that come up is how we help folks. Another way people in the community can help is to develop, instead of making assumptions about the dynamics of homelessness or about homeless persons, to become more, attend forums like this and just intentionally become more aware of kind of the things that surround homelessness and lead to it, and some of the solutions, become better acquainted with some of the solutions that are working, like housing first, what that is, what harm reduction as a concept truly is, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm sure we could all go on and on about how the community could help, but I just want to acknowledge that the community already is helping by voting measures like the one I discussed and continuously voting for the public safety levy each year, which funds shelters and domestic, not only jail, but shelters and domestic violence services and that sort of thing. So I'll give up the floor to whoever else wants to weigh in on that.
Alex, did you want to go?
My connection's a little unstable. So Christy, if I start chopping in and out, please
You're good.
Let me know.
Okay.
So I'll probably get some heat from a couple people, but frankly, I don't hand out money to people standing on the corner. If I have money to give, I donate it to a nonprofit that works with people that are disenfranchised. And they use those funds for shelter beds, for blankets, for feeding programs, for all sorts of different things. And you're going to a reputable source, right? And we wanna, just like the community sometimes needs to be, taught. Sometimes people that are experiencing need to be taught, and sometimes the best way to teach them is to help funnel them in the direction of where the resources are. So I would say, if you have a local nonprofit in your area, go see if they have some cards. And when you see somebody that's experiencing, go like, have you been to this place? This is a really good place. And they might have already been there and they might already be connected, but connecting people to resources. I mean, propping up our local community agencies and nonprofits is really important. When people move in, you get a new apartment, we might be able to help furnish it, but it's still not a home yet. And I've seen a lot of really good communities that have stepped up and done welcome home kits and given it to the providers. And then when somebody gets into their first apartment, they get a basket and it's got a plant and a picture and a welcome mat and some blankets and things that can help turn just an apartment into a home. Something about those little knickknacks around your house kind of make the difference between an empty bookshelf. It's those are the little things. And when community members step up and do those kind of things, it really is helping solidify for a person that now they have a home. I've seen ones where they do welcome home baskets and they'll give a card with the family and be like, we want, well, your family is our family. And, a lot of churches do this, synagogues, other, faith-based communities do, that kind of work. And I think that that's always a great thing that the community can do to help with the work we're doing. Also, there's a lot of events for shelter, and the people that don't want shelters in their neighborhoods are very quick to show up to let everybody know that sheltering is a bad idea. And if you support shelters and getting people indoors, it's really also nice to have people that show up to those meetings that are, on the other end, that really do support what we're doing, and that level of empathy and bringing people inside and knowing that that's there's an uphill battle when it comes to that work, and always having, fighters in your corner that want to, are backing the causes that we're doing are always very helpful as well.
Thank you, Alex. Maria or Melissa, do you want to? Maria.
Like Alex said, it's the small things that matter with the community when they do get together and help families out. And also, like he mentioned, the shelters, when we get somebody into a shelter, they're not alone. That's where the case management comes in place. And it's not to say that there's nothing, things are going to happen, but they always have somebody that they could fall back on to help them succeed. So it's just really, shelters do work. And like I said, the small things, don't be non-judgmental and also not judging a book by its cover, like I stated before as well.
Thank you. Melissa?
So I'm gonna second Pat with the voting. That, huge. Volunteering, non-judgmental. I see sometimes volunteers in different shelters. Some folks don't go because of certain volunteers, treating them like children. So if you're gonna volunteer, please, with respect and compassion and empathy. And gonna second again what Alex said, be up to date on resources in your area. If you don't want to hand a $1 or $2 to somebody, maybe, gift certificates for like $5 McDonald's meals, or, a bus pass, just the little things, a bottle of water. That's my say on it.
All right. Well, for everyone out there watching and listening, we will spend the remainder of our time answering some of your questions. So if you have not yet put something in the Q&A, please do it now. And we will try to get to as many questions as our time allows. So I see one here from Lori. What can community members do to help when we pass at those intersections with signs, when we pass encampments to support financially and support with our time? What is not helpful or not safe? And I think Alex answered that a little bit, but I think you guys kind of answered that question. But volunteering, giving money to agencies that are working with these communities. I feel like we answered that one.
I would just add that I don't think it's advisable to approach encampments as a community member unless you're with outreach staff of some sort connected to an outreach provider agency. The reason I say that is because the encampments are people's homes, and so we typically don't walk into other people's yards unannounced or unexpectedly, or walk in their homes. And the approaching an encampment is in the equivalent of doing that. So there's a specific way that we approach encampments, and so it's not advisable to go there. The other thing I would say is I got to echo what Alex says. I was homeless myself. That's why I'm doing this work. It was a long time ago, but it wasn't a commendable type of homelessness either. And I don't also advise giving money to folks. There are other ways to assist homeless persons, and without inadvertently helping them remain homeless by giving them money. So yeah, we as service providers also have to be careful that we're not doing the same thing, helping people maintain their homelessness rather than engaging with them and bringing them out of that circumstance. So.
Okay. If no one else has a comment, I have another question. Can anyone talk about shelter services that specifically target women with children?
I know Centro Cultural has a shelter for women in Cornelius. And that could be, families versus other shelters where it's just single persons where children can't be around. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on that one.
I don't know much about Family Promise, but there is a Family Promise shelter that you have to sign up though to get to. I don't know if it's just for women and children. I think it's family. So there might be males there.
I just want to add that from a systems perspective, there's been movement away from having shelters that target only women with children, even in the DV system, domestic violence system. In the older domestic violence system, there used to be rules against men being able to stay in domestic violence shelters They also used to have criteria that did not allow young males, like children over a certain age, over 12, into domestic violence shelters. So the trend has been to not categorize homelessness by gender in any way. And just if you're homeless, you're qualified to be in shelter. So, I mean, we do kind of still categorize families with children versus singles who are homeless, but I don't think we have gender specific sheltering going on to speak of necessarily. Alex, you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, I know that you all do the family shelter network, and that is something we're looking at, expanding within Washington County. But like Pat also said, like now we're looking at models of does this household need a congregate setting versus a non-congregate setting, and then trying to have the availability of non-congregate locations. That usually ends up being very effective for a family with a minor children or a household that's currently pregnant. So those options are available. I also know that like even within like our winter shelter program in Hillsboro, they have the building kind of set up where there's like, if you're a couple, you can kind of be in this area, and if you're males, you're in this area, and if you're females, you're in this area. And that's really essentially been set up for everybody's own personal safety feelings. And if somebody feels that they want to have that be in that area, that for females only, that's available as an option. But we also, like Pat said, are looking at ways to, shelter folks as a family unit, whether it's I hate to say the word non-traditional family unit, but like I just say like the non-historically white family unit, and more of what is in reality family units throughout the county or the state or the country in general.
Oh, we have a new question. Do you all feel what you are doing is helping? One can see your effort to do so.
I could go ahead and so I feel like it definitely is helping one family or one person at a time, especially when they get housed. It's it's just that feeling that you get of joy being able to get somebody off the street. It's not always going to come. We're not going to house all these people all at once. It's just one person at a time, and we will get there.
Anyone else? I have another question, unless if someone else doesn't have another comment.
Yes, I do think it's helping with comfort zone and our peer support. We get a lot of folks that come back to us and tell us, if it wasn't for you to just sit down and just listen to me cry with me, or just hold my hand while I, or help me fill out this housing application, I'd still be houseless today. So yes, I do think what we do is very helpful.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna yeah, sorry, Christy. I feel like I'm helping. I think just sometimes it gets discouraging on some of our ends, because sometimes I saw a really good speaker once. He was talking about homelessness, and he said that you have to house 5 households to get one household off the street, because people are falling into houselessness so often. And I don't know how factual that data is that he gave, but sometimes it does feel that way, that we work on uphill battle, right? Like, like we're constantly fighting against the stream like a salmon. And it's always nice when we hear just see somebody get their keys in their hand and move into their apartment. And me, from a funding perspective as an administrator, I rely really heavily on our providers giving us our success stories, and just seeing those pictures or hearing those successes of people going indoors. Because from my end, I don't see it all the time, and it's just nice to hear.
Okay, I have another question. Can you talk about your work and services that partner with the Hillsboro School District? And I understand providing stability for a school-aged child is so important. So do you guys work with the school district on and the work that you're doing?
So I can sort of answer this. Each school district has what is known as a McKinney-Vento student liaison. And so the McKinney-Vento student liaisons, they work with the homeless services system, and they do keep track of families that are experiencing housing insecurity. They interact with the system of services that are available, and they're there primarily to ensure that school-age children don't have an interruption in their educational experience just because their household is homeless. So they do things like arrange for kids to be picked up at whatever shelter they're in and ensure that kids can remain in the same school district that they lived in when they became housing or when they lost their housing. So they also participate in the annual point in time count effort with us and provide information and data to that effort. But yeah, they interact with the homeless services system as advocates who are kind of a conduit from the houseless family in the school district to the services system.
Another question. I'm curious, since the panelists mentioned increasing numbers of youth experiencing houselessness, how are their cases different? What does success look like for them?
Well, when I do outreach, we have warm handoffs to home plate. Yeah, so we do offer resources that we have on hand. We also give out care bags and, phone numbers, TriMet passes so they can get to the drop-in center at home plate. But us ourselves at New Narrative don't have youth services for houseless folks.
Well, youth services are different because young adults. Their brains are still developing. There's a lot of, the things, I would say anybody in this panel would say the things I did when I was 22. Now, when I became 40, I look back, I go, I cannot believe, what was I thinking, right? Services for youth are different because you're working with somebody that's, still learning, still exploring, still pushing boundaries in other ways. Also, you see a lot of youth that, are couch surfing, hopping from friend's house to friend's house. They might have gotten kicked out because of a fight, their sexual orientation, a lot of things. And so there's just some different features. There's some unique aspects of working with youth. I'd say one of the unique aspects of working with youth is peer-led, other folks that are, young adults working with other young adults, making, really focusing on building up their supportive network and noticing the importance of what a supportive network is to a young person. A youth's friends are very important to them, right? And just realizing as you're working with somebody that those friendships are really sometimes the things that hold them together, and nurturing those. Sometimes you end up working with a group of folks that are friends versus one person. And so what does success look like for the youth? Sometimes it's education, right? Sometimes it's getting them connected back to school. Sometimes it's employment, it's a little different, right? If you're 65 years old on Social Security disability, success for you might just be getting indoors and stabilized, versus if somebody, a younger person has, many more opportunities ahead of them, and how do you help them pave the way to being able to, grasp those, those opportunities, right? So it's a little different.
Well, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you guys want to have a last statement or comment on? Something you didn't get to say that you maybe wanted to say? Thought I'd give you that chance to. I really appreciate all of you so much and all the work you do. It's really amazing. And I've been so grateful to get to know you a little bit working on this project together. We do have a quick little survey for the public. We want to get feedback on what you think of the program tonight. So I'm going to put a poll up that's just going to be, I'll leave it up for a quick minute. And if you could just answer what you think. And then also, while you're looking at that, and if you just can take a minute to fill that out, I want to let everyone know that this is the kickoff event for our Hillsboro Reads community events throughout the month. Our book, again, is Nomadland by Jessica Bruder. And we also have No Fixed Address by Susan Nielsen. And there's going to be a lot of really great events throughout the month. You can look at our Hillsboro Public Library's webpage. And on the front cover, there's a Hillsboro Reads tab, and it tells all about the events. Coming up, we have trivia. We are currently doing a dignity drive, and in conjunction with students at the local high schools and the YAC Youth Advisory Council to collect hygiene products for youth that will go directly to the students in our community. And we're working with Mckinney-Vento, who was mentioned just recently, to help distribute those items. We're also have a gallery exhibit in the library where we're asking people what home means to them, and they're bringing in their artwork. So please, if you have something that you'd like to share with us, we can put it in our libraries to exhibit the rest of the month, and all kinds of great things. So I'll leave the poll up one more minute. And again, to all the panelists, thank you so much. I really appreciate the work you do. And and your passion for everything you do too. I can really see it in everything you talk about. And I feel like I've learned so much from all of you. And I hope that everything we've talked about and is helping the community bring some understanding to it as well. So, and I'm gonna close that. I think that's all we have for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.